Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another happy Saturday. I am Dr. Lauren Pitts, sports mental health empowerment coach, and your host of House Talk Pregame. My awesome and amazing Ronnie, you my surrogate son now. Eric and I have officially adopted you as one of our surrogate
I
children.
appreciate it.
Um,
I
yeah,
appreciate
my
it.
my amazing co-host week after week, Ronnie Ransom. And folks, we are so happy to be back. We have an amazing show for you today. Ronnie's going to tell you a bit about that in a bit. And Ronnie, I really think you my ride or die. Like I really, 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 truly believe I consider you my ride or die. And it has just been an honor and a privilege to share the airwaves with you. For goodness gracious, knocking on a year hard. And it
It
has
came
just
quick.
been an amazing journey and so much more to come. So look, folks, for our team here at Pregame, it's all about family. Week in and week out, it is all about family, your family and ours. Week after week, we are having the hard conversations, and they get real hard and real raw sometimes. So we're going to go ahead and put that disclaimer out there too, on topics that are relevant to our Black and Brown communities globally, including our HBCU families, scholar and professional athletes and their families, and our Heritage Sports Radio Network family. We we're humbled and we are honored, and we truly count it a privilege to be with you week after week. We love that you join us each week to get powerful, albeit raw, life, sports, and mental health information that you need to make well-informed athletic and life transforming decisions. Also, don't forget that you can catch us on HSRN every Saturday at this same time. Ronnie and I always late because we really do compete against ourselves. We're on HSRN right now at 11 a.m. and also at 10 p.m. on Saturday nights, as well as on Sundays at 6 p.m. We have a great show lined up for you today. Ronnie.
Thank you, Dr. Pitts, and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of House Talk. We got a powerful show for y'all today. We're going to be talking about a lot. We're going to get our money's worth today. We have a special guest coming back to our show. Mr. Mike Profit will be joining us in a few as we continue our financial literacy month. So today's topic will be let your money work for you. What does it mean to have my money work for me? How does that happen? What is generational wealth, and how much money would you consider generational wealth? Among other questions, I'm part of the millennial generation, and Dr. Pitts and Mike Profit are definitely part of what we would consider the old guard as it comes to financial literacy and things like that. So what are the differences and what have been the changes over the years and how we view financial literacy, and how we go about gaining financial literacy compared to how they might have been doing it back in the day. So we have a list of topics to talk with Mike about, a list of questions, definitely ready to pick his brain again. I'm excited for today's show. I got goosebumps because, typically me and Dr. Pitts, we go over a mental health tip of the week. And, it's been a long week. It's been a very draining week, an emotional roller coaster of a week. So we definitely want to process this week with you all this morning and talk about, some of the events that happened in the news, like, the Chauvin trial. The verdict came out, I believe it was Tuesday, right? Tuesday or Wednesday. And then unfortunately the untimely and unfortunate killing of Ma'Khia Bryant, which was literally, I think, minutes before the verdict of the Chauvin trial that came out. And we just want to process that with y'all and have an open discussion about how we felt about it and what our thoughts were about, this entire weekend. It's just this entire, for Dr. Pitts' entire life and, for my life, this reoccurring theme, this constant theme over and over again of, here we have these unjust killings, these unfortunate, deaths and things like that at the hands of people who have all the power in that moment. And so, I'll let Dr. Pitts kick it off, but, it's definitely been a lot to process and take in. So Dr. Pitts, talk to us about how the week went for you and what are your thoughts?
Ronnie, I didn't watch the trial, in part because I'm literally just so busy from sun up to sundown that I didn't have time in the day. One of the things that I had told Eric that I want to do is put a TV in the office so that I can have it on mute and follow what's going on. But then the other part of it is there was a part of me that was concerned that he was going to get off. And I just didn't know if that happened, if it was going to have a Spike Lee do the right thing effect on me. Just being totally transparent, right? I'm like, I don't know that I want to entertain that type of anger and rage right now. So I didn't watch it. So when the verdict did come out, though, my house was literally in an uproar. You would have thought that there were 20 people, 30, 40 people in here for as loud as Eric was when that verdict came out. I agree with the comment that Jalen Rose made to Don Lemon on CNN when Don asked him, was he optimistic? And what he said is that, and I'm paraphrasing, that he believed that it was a win, but that to see the transformation that we need to see as a people within the context of how the dominant culture views us and treats us, I don't believe that it's something that I'm going to see in my lifetime. I don't know that I'm confident that you're going to see it in your lifetime. We're talking centuries of injustice and inequality. And, I, depending on what God says, I might have 30, 40, 50 more years left. That's a short window of time to undo centuries worth of damage. So that's my feeling about that. It was a big win. It's a step in the right direction. So there is a degree of optimism. I also wanted to touch on, and I thought that it was so incredibly powerful, Ronnie, how, as many of our audience members know, I am an adjunct instructor for a global program. So I have the blessing of teaching students from all over the world. And the responses that my students had to that verdict from all over the world was staggering. It was just absolutely positively staggering to see these young people so moved by that act of justice. It gave me hope. It really did give me a sense of hope. And as they were talking about how the verdict coming down was received in their respective countries, it gave me a glimmer of hope. It did. Now, the shooting of Ms. Bryant. The way that shooting struck me, Ronnie, was I looked up the technical definition of assassination because that's what I feel is happening to people, ourselves included, of Black and brown hue. And, as any word, there were a couple of different definitions, but the number 2 definition of assassination talked about to injure or destroy. The victim is taken by surprise and treacherously killed without legal process. And based upon that definition, I said, we're being assassinated. We are being systematically annihilated as a people. And it brought to the forefront of my mind the question that I asked you before we went live. I said, Ronnie, what happened to the days of police officers shooting to injure or disable? And you said to me, Dr. Pitts, they're trained to disable a threat. Why is deadly force the primary means for disabling a threat when it's people of color? I think about the days, Ronnie, when I was a therapist for the corrections, for the Department of Corrections at a state facility for adjudicated youth. Ronnie, at the time, I was 5'2", 130 pounds. And I was taught how to bring down young men who were 2 times my size. And guess who did it? You know how many times working in a maximum security facility for adjudicated boys, who many of which are your size? And I can bring them down, Ronnie. I didn't have gun. I didn't have taser. I didn't have nightstick. I had the grace of God, my formal training, and some adrenaline pumping. It's probably why I need rotator cuff surgery. But anyway, but I brought them down, Ronnie. I brought them down. And I just don't accept that bringing a gun to a knife fight is the answer. It reminds me of, I am a diehard Law and Order Special Victims Unit watcher, and the episode on Thursday was a similar situation, but it was an adult woman who was the owner of a restaurant that was going under because of COVID, and she took the person, that the realtor that she was supposed to meet to turn in the keys to the restaurant. Mm-hmm. She held him at bay with a knife and held him hostage. And then Detective Olivia Benson came in, and she was wielding the knife and what have you. And Detective Benson is working to de-escalate the situation. And then the woman ends up going in her purse and she gets a gun. In the meantime, Ronnie, outside, you've got SWAT and NYPD and just everybody, and snipers, and just folk just ready. They on the ready. Trigger finger itchy. And the chief of police said, she's trained to de-escalate. Give her a chance to de-escalate the situation. It took her a while, but the woman walked out with Detective Benson, who was a woman of Latino descent. She walked out the door with her life. Mm-hmm. Dick Wolf pulls his subject matter for these shows from the headlines. You know, they changed the names in the whole 9 yards. So Absolutely. We know that happens all day, every day. Mm-hmm. But depending upon where you are in this country, you're going to end up dead if you got black or brown skin. And Ronnie, I'm going to tell you, I'm pissed off about it. I am so sick and tired of turning on the news and hearing that somebody went ham and another person of color has lost their life in a situation that could possibly have been de-escalated and a life saved. And perhaps, because let's just face it, is it clear that if you're yielding a knife, there's some sort of disconnect? Does the world have any idea of the trauma that this young woman may have endured that landed her in foster care in the first place? Does the world have any idea of how traumatic an experience being in foster care is in the first place? Did anybody stop to think that maybe this 16-year-old child, somebody's baby, may have been in a mental health crisis and needed, for the first time in her life, for the system to not fail her? But the system failed her again, and it cost her life. And you know what it made me think about, Ronnie? And then I'm going to shut up because I'm so mad I'm about to cry. It made me think about how violent and aggressive I was at 16. Ronnie, you turn back the hands of time 30-something years. I'm not sitting here talking to you. Because Lauren, at 16 today, Salem PD would have shot and killed me a long time ago, because I was having to be restrained. I was fighting in the street. I was fighting in school, not because I didn't have anything else better to do, because I was troubled, because I was trying to make sense of being sexually abused and verbally, emotionally, and physically abused almost every day of my life. I was trying to make sense of a father choosing to not be a part of my life. I was dealing with a stepfather who had to go away to do a bid. I was dealing with domestic violence and substance use and abuse and mental illness in my family that had existed for generations. I could have been that young woman, Ronnie. I could have been that young woman. I can think of 6 girls off the top of my head that were in high school with me that, had we been in the state that we were in back then today, we would be headline news. And I'm sick of it. The police departments have got to bring in mental health practitioners that they can put on rotation on staff, either as a consultant or a salaried member of personnel, that they are rotating to go out on these calls and give us a chance to de-escalate these situations. It's time. It is time. It is time. It is time. I'm available. I'm available.
Man, I echo and repeat everything you just said, and you said it so beautifully. It is a travesty, and I think, you know, like the other systems that we have in play here in this world, the criminal justice system is a failed system, just like our family systems are failed, our financial systems are failed. We are a failed country who we have just turned a blind eye to morals and, you know, putting people first. And I always say, you know, outside of just, you know, the mental health profession, for the most part, every other profession puts profit over people. Yeah. And, you know, just to go back to the, you know, the Chauvin verdict real quick, you know, I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't know how the verdict was going to go. You know, I remember the Trayvon Martin verdict back in 2013. I remember I watched that when it announced at nighttime that they had found, you know, George Zimmerman, you know, not guilty. Yeah. And from that day forward, you know, it's crazy now where it's become, you just hear it over and over and over and over and over again.
It tears at your fiber.
I mean, you almost get, I hate to say it, but you almost get numb to it. You almost kind of like,
it desensitizes you.
You almost kind of expect it to hear it now. Like, and it's just so, it's so unfortunate. So, you know, while I believe that, you know, Chauvin definitely, you know, and we still have to await sentencing. You know, they found him guilty, and that's right. Good. But, you know, sentencing is what we'll really see, you know, how, because at the bare minimum, he might get 15, 20 years.
Right. Whereas they throw us under the jail and throw away the key and heap more dirt. Look, blow the building up so that the cinder block levels on us, and then brings in heaps of more dirt and piles it on us.
Exactly. And so, you know, while that was a W, and, you know, we'll take W's any way we can get them. A win is a win. Yeah. You know, and in sports, we say that all the time. Doesn't matter if you win by 1 point or 30 points. A win is a win. But I feel like this was just a 1 point win, a 1 point victory. Like, this was a nail biter. You know, it shouldn't have took 10 hours to deliberate. This should have been. Please excuse them.
He's agreeing with
you. 1 second.
you.
Apologize about that. My furry children, they heard
Okay.
somebody outside. But as I was saying, I felt like that verdict was a 1-point win. It shouldn't have took 10 hours to deliberate. The world saw what happened. And I know we're not supposed to hold people in the world of in the court of public opinion, but we didn't need a court to figure out what happened and what went wrong here. Mm-hmm. But we got the W, and I'm happy for that. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we have literally 30 minutes before the verdict came out, the 16-year-old girl who lost her life, way, 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 way too early. And we have the same MO, but this time, she called the cops. She called the police. And, I watched the video, and, I will say this, and me and Dr. Pitts had talked about this before we got on air. A taser's dropping a 16-year-old girl. Yeah. From what I saw and from what I saw in the video, it did not appear that she was on any type of substances or anything that would make her more difficult to restrain if she was intoxicated on something. She looked like a frustrated, scared 16-year-old girl who was trying to defend herself. And I mean, like Dr. Pitt said, old people always say, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Yeah. But a taser is dropping a 16-year-old girl. I know way too many people in the criminal justice system that are police officers that work on all aspects of law enforcement. A taser is dropping a 16-year-old girl. And unfortunately, we can't go back in time and change that. And it's extremely unfortunate, but the girl did not deserve to lose her life. And like Dr. Pitt said, we don't know what led up to that. And I always tell people context is so important. Understanding that one singular thing just doesn't happen out of thin air. It doesn't just happen for no reason. Things build up. Right. Clearly, a lot of things built up to that moment. And there are a lot of people who failed this girl. Not only did the police fail this girl, I've heard a lot of reports about her foster situation, but it sounds like the foster situation failed her. Clearly, if she was in the foster care, her family failed her. Her own family failed her. So we're looking at a girl who has been failed by adults over and over and over again. Society tells her one thing, but reality does a completely different thing that contradicts what society tells her life should be like, how she should be raised, what kind of environment she should be in. What reality has stripped that away from her. So while we don't know her entire story, this 16-year-old girl did not deserve to lose her life because she had a knife. And regardless of the actions of what she was doing with the females, she should not have lost her life. And I have, like I said, I have a lot of very good friends who are police officers, mainly most of them are Black police officers, but I have these conversations with them, and I asked them, like, could this situation have been prevented? How does y'all's training go? What is the mindset of a police officer? Because I can imagine that the job itself is a very demanding job, but it is a job that you sign up for. It's a job that you choose to do. When we hear the Blue Lives Matter and things like that, it ain't like that job chose you. You chose that career. We all choose our careers. Right. Is counseling a calling for me and Dr. Pitts? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we chose to go into this field. Right. So, when you choose to do a job, I always tell people, once you know better, you have to do better. And clearly, as police officers as a whole, I feel like there are a lot of flaws in their systems. Yeah. As far as accountability, holding them accountable for how they do things. And I'm talking to Black officers too, because I get it, that brotherhood that they enforce on y'all of, sticking out for one another because nobody does y'all's job, nobody understands y'all's job. Mm-hmm. We hear that with every job. I mean, me and Dr. Pitts would argue, we would probably look out for each other, even in the worst of situations, even if there was a negligent situation that me or Dr. Pitts did, we'd probably be like, look, you understand the job. However, right is wrong is wrong. And in our field, we preach accountability goes over all. at the end of the day, you must be accountable for your actions and your actions only. You can't point the finger. You can't sit there and say, well, I was told this, or I was trained this, and no, you have to be accountable for your actions.
Ronnie, you know how stuff just comes to me when you're talking. If that had been a police officer's daughter, would she be dead? Or would
No,
it have
no.
de-escalated?
And I'm glad you said that, because do I think the answer has to be that, white kids and white people got to start losing their life unjustly? No, I do not, because wrong, like I said, two wrongs don't make it right. However, right, this innate subconscious primal anxiety or fear, yeah, of seeing somebody of the other skin tone or of the other race or even gender and feeling threatened, yeah, that is something that police training cannot address. That is something that mental health professionals must intervene in and must address. Yeah. Because what do we do know about law enforcement? And like I said, one of my very good friends is a testament to this. Mm-hmm. They are very overworked. They are put to the max. And to be in that state of mind for prolonged periods of time, we know as mental health professionals, when you're in a state of fight or flight for a prolonged period of time and you don't give your body a chance to rest, that will distort your cognitive way of thinking. That will distort your decision process. That will definitely distort your reactions and your innate abilities. If you're always in fight or flight mode, and as a police officer, I always hear them say, they're gonna go home. Trust and believe they will go home. They're there to serve and protect, but they're gonna go home. So let's be all the way real about this. They want to go home. So when you're in that state of mind for a prolonged period of time and you don't have no way of addressing or processing that, that changes you. That changes you. And what we see here is, unfortunately, too many people of color are losing their lives to what I feel like is more than a systemic issue. This is more of a subconscious primal issue that, for centuries has not been addressed. I always tell people, post-traumatic slave syndrome is a real thing. And so is post-traumatic slave master syndrome.
Say it.
Having power for prolonged periods of time will change you as a person. Yeah. When you're in a position of power, that changes you. And when you use that to hurt people, when you use that because you're scared, you make irreversible decisions. And too many times we've seen police officers make irreversible decisions too many times. And then the problem is people of color who have to suffer these consequences. Yeah. It's the same tired out story. And then all this is no different than what the police officers were sticking dogs and fire hoses on my grandparents' generation. This is no different than when they had the slave master who became the police patrol looking for runaway slaves or slaves who, indenture service and things like that. This is the same old story. This is just our generation of going through it. And it has to stop. To Dr. Pitts' point, we might not see this stop in our generation. And, but we have to be the change. And I always say, we got to stop letting these people who don't live in their, especially in our people of color's communities, police these areas. Yeah. We need people of color to be police officers. We need people of color to be lawyers. We need people of color to be judges. I just went to court Wednesday for a client in Richmond, Virginia. Richmond, Virginia is a predominantly Black city, predominantly Black. We have a Black mayor now. But however, when I walked in that juvenile courthouse, you know who pictures I see on the wall as judges? Yeah. I see old white men and women as the judges of these young Black boy and girls' decisions and fates. We need to change that. We need to see people of our own. And it's crazy because even in the Chauvin trial, a jury of your peers, and any other trial is always a jury of your peers, but I don't never see their peers up there.
Isn't that something? So did you hear about, but I wanted to touch on your point about judges. There is, I was growing up, I was a Scared Straight fan. And you have new, and I know y'all have one. Y'all have one in Virginia near you. But there's a version of it because the new generation of Scared Straight is beyond Scared Straight. Yeah. And there's a program running comparable to it down in Georgia. And the judge who is in support of that program is a Black female judge. Well, they're annihilating her in the media down there.
I would imagine. I would probably be annihilating her because I've seen it firsthand, and I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
It's funny that you say that, because my client who was in court on Thursday, can I touch on this for a second?
Please, we're waiting on Mike. So you got until
So
he.
my client had a traumatic life.
Mm-hmm.
Very, I've, you know, I've talked to you about, you know, broad details, not specifics, but broad details about this client's case.
Yeah.
He's been through more in his teenage years than I probably will ever go through in my life. And he is the result of two parents who abandoned him, and he was basically left to fend for himself. And he's been in a state of survival for 7 years, basically half his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so he, you know, of course, he's made a lot of mistakes, looking for love, looking for attention, looking for compassion from people. To make a long story short, the judge was not an African-American judge. I won't say their race because I don't want people to think I'm attacking this specific race or anything. The judge could have been any color for this matter, but the way this judge condescended my client, the first words that came out of his mouth was, because my client was actually in the detention center when we were in court and he was on video monitor. Yeah. The first thing the judge says is, "Do you like being in there?" And I know my client. And Dr. Pitts, you know, you have those clients who, when adults challenge their authority, especially kids who are very guarded and very on edge, when you challenge their authority, 9 times out of 10, they don't care the situation they're in, they're going to respond. Yeah. And I applauded my client when we got up out of there. And I told him, I said, man, like, you held your composure so well, because the judge condescended him for literally 15 minutes straight. And I was triggered. I wanted to speak out. I wanted to cut the judge off and be like, really? Like,
well, that happens to me all the time in court. Bite my tongue smooth off.
And so I say all that to say, you know, we have so many failed systems, and so many of these children, you know, Makai Bryan is no different than, you know, what my clients are going through, or the clients that we serve in these underserved areas, in these low-income areas. They have been failed by so many systems, and they've been failed by society because things have been promised to us, things that, you know, kids shouldn't have to go through, kids that they deserve loving parents. They deserve to have a safe environment. They deserve to have a family. They deserve to have good friends. But we know that's not reality. We know that's not how it works. However, when we hold people to certain standards that we know are just not afforded to them, I don't see how we continue to turn a blind eye to this. I don't see how we continue to sit there and say this isn't a color issue, this isn't a race issue, when it is. I mean, and it's clear as day. And let's be real. We talk about being real with ourselves and being real as a country. We're not real with ourselves. We live in facades.
Live in bubbles.
The three basic rights that are guaranteed to us: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Who really gets that? Yeah. Who? Yeah. Not me. Not you. Not nobody on this call. Nobody. There's a very select few who get to actually have those 3 liberties that are guaranteed to us in the Constitution. A 400-year-old document that has not been changed, that has guaranteed these rights of every natural-born U.S. citizen or naturalized citizen. Yeah. But 99% of the country doesn't get that, especially the populations of color.
Yeah. It is, and as you said, you know, leading in, we could stay there all day, and we know it's going to come up over and over and over and over and over again, regardless of what topic we're covering here on Pregame. But our guest has joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and transition us. So, folks, we are so honored and privileged to have with us again Mike Profit, born and raised in Canada. Mike moved to Delaware in 2001 for the warm winters. And is still close enough to drive back to visit family and friends in the summer. Mike earned his undergrad in business at Wesley College in Dover, Delaware, summa cum laude, and continued on there to earn his MBA. Mike chose to make a career change as a financial planner after being caught up in a downsizing with a global organization in 2016. Mike believes that most people are not properly taught what they should be doing with their money once they start earning it. Because they don't know what they don't know, they often miss areas and don't form the good habits needed to set themselves up for financial independence and freedom. He's made it his mission to help educate others. They may not be as financially savvy as some on the things they should be thinking about to help them set up for success. because the world of finances can be extremely broad, complex, and daunting for many. He works with people in a way that breaks things down and makes them easy to understand. Once Mike understands a person's financial situation and future goals, he can identify and explain options to allow the person to make an educated decision that's the best fit for them and their financial plan. And Mike, before I say welcome to HT again, I just had a thought. Stuff comes to me randomly. I'm gonna say this because I think that it's relevant to this subject matter today. We as people of color, and Mike, I have very, very, very transparent conversations with you. When I contacted you and asked, would you be kind enough to join us for pregame? I also shared with you that I had contacted some other professionals within your line of work. I wanted you to join us too, but I also contacted financial planners of color from 3 different agencies, not so much as a courtesy response. The one person that contacted me on 3 separate occasions stood me up for the meeting that I took my time and energy to set up and allocate it in my schedule. And I think that that is a problem as well. That you talk about accountability. How many people do we know that will reject this information because it's coming from a white man? But it's phenomenal information. It's food for the financial soul that can be instrumental in transforming their financial lives and helping them to get their financial lives in order. But because folks are so limited in their thinking, and because the climate that we're living in today has folks rigid and they would reject the information that this man is getting ready to share just because of the color of his skin. And that is a problem too, because the same offer that was extended to this kind gentleman was extended to financial planners of color as well. And they didn't even give the common courtesy of saying, Dr. Pitts, no, thank you. So Mike, I thank you for accepting this invitation. We thank you for sharing the wealth of knowledge that you shared on the last show and that we know you're about to blow our socks off with today. So thank you and welcome to HT Pregame again, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Great seeing you both again. Yeah, I mean, I just, like you said, I just want to help people. So, color doesn't matter to me. People need help. Everybody, makes money, earns a living, and has bills to pay. So, anybody that I can help, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you,
The only color that's the same that matters is the green paper.
That's right.
We'll talk about that gold and silver too.
Yeah, that's true too. So Mike, we're super excited to have you back on the show. I am personally super excited because I feel like today I'm going to be the voice of the millennial generation because I have so many questions. I know we got about 45, 50 minutes, so we're going to try and get through these questions as quickly as possible. But I want to set the scene for our conversation because, like we said, our conversation today is built around generational wealth and making money work for you. So I want to start there, but I want to go back a little bit. So I want to go back to the years of 2006 through 2009, which we know ultimately was the 2008 financial crisis. And I implore those of you, especially from my generation, because when this was taking place, I was just a freshman and sophomore in high school. Fortunately, my parents were not affected by the 2008 financial crisis, but countless people that I knew their families were severely affected by it, especially when I was in school. I would consider my family as middle class, a lot of the upper middle class, and the what we would consider the rich kids back in the day, their families were severely impacted by the 2008 financial crisis. So for those who are not familiar with it, there's an actual documentary on YouTube by HBO called Panic. It's kind of an overview. It's a great documentary about it. So I want to give people just a brief overview real quick. If you want to interject in there, please stop me. So just a very broad, brief summary of the 2008 financial crisis is that the housing market had a huge bubble. They were giving out mortgages at a ridiculous rate. People were saying they were making an amount that they knew they weren't making. They were getting these big mortgages with what they considered adjustable financial rates, adjustable interest rates, meaning that when they first got them, they were basically paying pennies on the mortgage. And then after a couple years, the interest hit and it was time to collect. And for over 60% of people who had a Freddie Mac and a Fannie Mae mortgage, they lost their mortgage, lost their house, and eventually, the big banks such as Bear Stearns, JP Morgan, these large financial institutions who, in all reality, were profiting off of this housing market madness. They started losing millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the government said, well, we know you all did very terrible bets, very terrible investments, and played a lot of people, but we're going to bail you out. Because if we don't bail you out, well, then not only will America suffer, but the world will suffer. Because anytime the American market is down, typically the world market is down. And if we let our market crash because we let these people dive on their bad investments, it will be like 1929 on steroids. So, new regime comes in, things kind of balance out. Here we are, 2021. And, while we haven't experienced anything close to, well, I would say last year was kind of the closest to 2008 that we've had in a while. For you as a financial advisor and somebody who's been in the financial field for a very long time, what are some of the lessons that people from my generation, now that we're getting to, our late 20s, early 30s, where financial literacy and generational wealth is actually becoming a forefront of our discussions, what are some of the lessons that we should take going forward that maybe our parents and, a lot of the older generation made mistakes in? Because, the blame was passed around on both sides. The banks would sit there and say, well, they should have read the fine print. They should have known what they were getting into. And the average people are like, well, we got swindled. We got sold on a deal. The market crashed. And now here we are with this extravagant loan that we can't pay, but we didn't get bailed out. We didn't get a get out of jail free card, but you all did.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing now is, millennials learned from their parents and had seen, the devastating impacts that it had on them. So they've become better savers. I see that with a lot of my clients that I sit down with, and it's, I think it's a great lesson to be learned, because saving is a habit. And it's a great habit. So, more people are doing that versus maybe a lot of people in 2008 timeframe, for example.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, last year, I think was kind of, and I told people like last year when the pandemic first started, I think if there was one lesson to learn from the pandemic, it was for me to have a rainy day fund. And, fortunately, for, me and my wife, we had already had a rainy day fund that we were building at the time. So that was a nice cushion. And, even fortunately for me and, like Dr. Pitts, we were gracefully and, rightfully so, essential workers, because, people's mental health was at, I think the entire country was in crisis mode last year. So, I was fortunate enough to be in a field where, I didn't have to suffer a large financial blow. But even last year, a lot of people suffered large financial blows, and not having that savings, not having that emergency money that we talked about in the last episode has definitely hurt a lot of people. So let's move into actually building generational wealth. So, we hear this term generational wealth all the time. We got to get generational wealth. We got to start building generational wealth. Mike, give us your definition of what you believe generational wealth is.
I think it's when somebody wins the lottery and all of a sudden, boom, hey, we got millions, right? Powerball. No, it's really, knowledge, having the education, having the financial literacy that you need to build. So a lot of it, historically, you look at, names like Carnegie and Rockefeller and, all of these big names that are still familiar today, where they made their money, 100 years ago. That's created generational wealth because they made so much that that money gets invested and it earns money, right? It's working and earning more money so that you can actually, sometimes leave that principal and just live off of that interest that it accrues,
Mhm.
that it grows, right? So that can last a long, long time depending on the amount of money. Another interesting way to do it is through life insurance, for example, which is relatively affordable for most people and can pay out literally millions, depending on how much you put into it. But thinking of, I have clients that get whole life insurance on their young children, and over time that has a cash value that can grow within the right policy that can be used, and when they pass away, that gets passed on to their children and so on. So if you start with that after 3 or 4 generations, you could possibly have built up a significant amount of money that can continue to be passed along. And again, along with that comes the education as well. So it's all about the education, how you're investing that money, that can continue to grow and snowball, so to speak.
Yeah, and I was actually reading a study where it said that the average wealth that stays in the family normally is around 3 generations. Which, I mean, I always tell people, as hard as it is to build that generational wealth for your family, it's probably just as hard, if not harder, to maintain it. Because once you get it, people think getting it is the hard part. I always argue, no, it's maintaining it and progressing is always the hard part, because you have to adjust to the times, you have to adjust to inflation and things like that. Um, so talk to us about how generational wealth is created. What are the different type of ways that people can generate generational wealth or wealth in general?
Okay. In addition to the Powerball, it's, I have clients that are business owners. So they've created a business that over time has grown and is now worth a lot of money. So when they pass away, they've created a trust that their assets go into, that their beneficiaries can live off of probably for the next few generations. You said, 3 generations perhaps. Well, if they use that money in the right way, they can, maybe they're not always drawing from that trust, for example, and they're creating their own wealth. So that can continue to last for generations to come. So that's probably the biggest way I'm seeing, is business owners creating businesses, having money left to their heirs, and continuing that.
Yeah, and I mean, so for somebody like you who's a financial advisor, if somebody came to you and said, well, I want to start building wealth through, such things as like real estate, or even, starting a business and things like that. What are some of the, I guess the safest ways to build that passive income, to start to build that generational wealth? I know a lot of people sit there and say real estate is one of the safest ways because, land doesn't disappear over time. Land just gets more expensive to obtain. So what are some other ways that people can start to generate income outside of just their regular 9 to 5 job?
Yeah, so you mentioned real estate's a good one. I have clients that do very well in real estate. Again, you can consider that as a business, right? That's an
Mhm.
investment, real estate investor, or any other type of business. Um, just saving, investing, doing it incrementally. Somebody that starts out in their 20s and starts socking away money in a 401k or IRA or something similar,
Mhm.
that can really grow over time, so that when they retire, maybe they've got $1 million, $2 million. And if they don't live a long time, that can be passed on to, their children, grandchildren, and so on. But just continuing to do that and build and build and build, is, again, goes back to habits, doing that, investing. But yeah, there's,
So, when we talk about like being able to build generational wealth, of course, you have to have the funds to do it. And, oftentimes especially in my generation, I see where we have this constant conversation of, paying off debt versus, you know, building up a stream of income, now, and then going back to address the debt, or addressing the debt now so you can build a stream of income. And, me and you had a conversation before where, I told you that, one of the saving strategies and the way that, me and my wife have invested in getting, out of debt is, Dave Ramsey's debt snowball method. And for those of you who are not, really familiar with it, really quick, it's a 7-step process where number one is you save $1,000 as a rainy day fund. Baby step number two is you pay off all your debt, and with the smallest amounts first, and then build up to whatever your largest debts are. After that, then it's you save up 3 to 6 months of expenses, and so on and so forth. I think that's a great way of going about it because, for me, I feel like, well, I can never really feel financially free if I always have debt. And, and I mean, let's be real. Like if you have a debt to somebody, well, you kind of, they own you in a sense. Like they own you because they own this debt. When people say they bought a house or they have a house, no, you mortgaged the house that you hope to get in 30 years once it's paid off. But we know when push comes to shove, if you got a mortgage, the bank's going to take that house if you can't pay for it. So do you think that it's wise for people to try and hurry up and amass a lot of income to address debt, or should they address their debt first and not get into so much debt so they are able to expand on their income?
Yeah, I think it depends, Ronnie. Again, Dave Ramsey, I agree completely with a lot of the things he said, but he also talks to the general population.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when I'm talking to somebody, they're not the general population. They're a unique individual or couple or family or business owner but doing that is great because yes, I completely agree, pay off those debts because yes, you do owe somebody. You've not in all cases, but in some cases you're living beyond your means to acquire that debt. All right. And that's not something we want to be doing, but also think of how money grows over time and accumulates. So somebody investing in their retirement in their 20s and letting that grow, if they really focused on that in their 20s and gave it time to grow, by the time they're in their late 60s, has a much greater time period to grow and can grow bigger than somebody that's trying to save up for retirement in their 50s. So I think it's a balance of looking at what that debt is, and paying that off as well as you can, but also looking to grow. So example would be, hey, if I have a very low interest rate on a debt, but I can grow my money, let's say it's 3%, 4%, something like that, but I can grow my money at 9 or 10%, what's better? So maybe you're looking at a balance of paying down some debt while you're growing some money too. Again, it all depends on the individual and their situation.
I got you.
I had Mike, when you were talking about, investing in IRAs and what have you, do certificates of deposit fall in that same category to CDs?
CDs are very safe investments. They're insured by the banks. But right now we're in a very low interest rate environment. So you're not getting much of a return from a CD today.
Okay.
So yeah, I actually looked at CDs when I first started looking at investing and stuff like that. And I think some CDs only have like 1 to 2% interest return, which is, I mean, next to nothing in the grand scheme of things, which helps segue to, I think, which is a hot topic, especially, for, my generation and things like that, is investing in the stock market and things like that. And, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because, you being a financial advisor, I think even you would argue that you're starting to see the shift where a lot of younger people are starting to dabble in these things by themselves. We have trading platforms now such as Robinhood, Webull, you still have E-Trade, Fidelity, Yahoo Finance, and things like that, where now we don't necessarily have to go through the traditional route of going to an investment firm or going to a stockbroker or somebody like that, telling them where to put our money, and then they do it and they get a commission off what we make and things like that. Now it's kind of the middleman is being cut out of that, and now the consumer is directly involved in how they invest their money. And we know that, unfortunately, a lot of people are sold on the idea of, well, you put your money in the stock market, you close your eyes, and boom, now you can retire. We know it doesn't work that way. But a lot of people, especially a lot of younger people, have been sold on this dream of, well, I can control my finances. I know what I'm doing. I can learn along the way. And the stock market is a very dangerous game. So you being a financial advisor, what would you tell the young person who says, well, I want to manage my wealth on my own. I want to be able to manage my stock portfolio on my own, but they necessarily don't know a lot about it.
Yeah, and with the apps and everything today, like the ones you mentioned, I think they're great in that they're easy to use, right? I mean, hey, everybody's on their phone. I can start investing. It's got, companies like Robinhood have grown tremendously over the past year, with people being trapped at home and bored and looking up things and saving their money because we weren't out spending it. They just skyrocketed in the past year, and I think that's great to get people that weren't investing before to do investing now. But yeah, you mentioned, the stock market can be risky. So, educate yourself and learn as much as you can about it, and don't go too crazy, right? I mean, understand that there is risk in investing. There is a chance of loss. So be careful what you do. Historically over time, yes, the market's up and down, but our money goes up, right? Historically over time. So that's what you're looking at. You just have to understand there is that real risk there. But again, I mean, with everything at our fingertips these days, it's not hard to find information and get educated.
And I think, and you made a great point. And I'm me personally, I'm an avid user of Robinhood. I've dibbled and dabbled in stocks for the last couple of years. Educating myself on stocks and things like that. And I feel like for me as a responsible adult, I think is if I'm gonna do something like that, I think for me, I should know what I'm putting my money in outside of just trusting whether it would have been a stockbroker or a financial advisor and things like that. I should know where my money is going, and I should know how that process works as well. But a lot of people often don't do that. Oftentimes, a lot of people who have entrusted people like financial advisors, stockbrokers, things of that nature. I'm gonna give you my money. You're the professional. This is what you went to school and did all these fancy classes and stuff like that. You take care of it. And then when they lose their money, they're turning around looking like, well, what happened? And then when they explain it to them, they're like, well, none of that makes sense to me. How did I lose my money? You told me this was a surefire way that I won't gonna lose money that bad. And like you said, the stock market has a tradition of going up and it goes down, but over long term, it has traditionally, returned people's money. But I think especially for my generation, January was kind of like a eye-opening moment. When GameStop stock, for example, was pennies to $1, and this Reddit group had this funny idea of investing large sums of money into the stock to kind of trick the quote unquote old guards of the stock market, and it shed a lot of light, and there was actually a lot of conflict I saw where a lot of the people in the investment world felt threatened and attacked because they felt like the younger generation, we don't know necessarily what we're doing because we haven't gone to a financial professional. And so I think I think while it's very important to see financial professionals, I also think it's just as important for the everyday citizen. Like, well, if you want to get involved in this, you should have some responsibility in knowing how this works, whether it's taxes, your finances, or anything. So I say all to say, for you, Dr. Pitts swears by you. I swear by you. We know you. Well, Dr. Pitts definitely knows you on a more personal level. I've just had the honor of getting to know you. But how does somebody build rapport and find trust in a trustworthy financial advisor when, like I said earlier, we've seen time and time again where, just 12 years ago, these financial advisors who worked for these large corporations got bailed out because of the mistakes they made with people's money. So how does that feel to start to gain the trust of the everyday citizen again?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ronnie. And that, people like a Bernie Madoff, who was back in the news recently because he just passed away, it makes my job tough, right? For
The
people like
ultimate
me
finesse right there.
they're that are trying to help people. But there is a website called Brokerage. You could do brokercheck.com and put in the person's name, and that will give you their background in terms of their licenses, if they've had any complaints filed against them, that sort of thing. So, that's kind of maybe the first step. But it's important for someone to find someone that they vibe with, right? They get a good vibe with, that they feel comfortable with. I think that's key, because there's a lot of us out there, and not everybody gets along with everybody. So finding that person that you vibe with, and again, if they've got a clean record, that's helpful. But make sure they're asking you the right questions. Make sure they're educating you as well, because like you said, you can't go in there blind and blame everything on a financial advisor. But at the same time, it's the financial advisor's duty to help educate their client as well, and point out all of the risks and pitfalls and things of that nature.
I want to chime in on that. I think that, and I'm actually going to add a mental health to a mental health caveat to this. One of the things that comes up for us in this line of work that Ronnie and I do is people succumb, if you will, to the things in life that have impacted them so deeply that they question their own judgment. And when I'm processing with people about their ability to make good decisions, about their ability to have sound judgment calls, one of the things that comes up, as sure as my name is Dr. Lauren Pitts, is people seem to be okay ignoring the red flags. So my question always is, well, why? Why would you ignore that internal knowing that we have? It is a built-in alarm system that we're all born with that gives us some insight as to whether or not, as you said, Mike, am I vibing with this person? I think that it is imperative when people are looking for a financial advisor that they do not go into the search for that relationship, because Mike and I have a relationship. We have a relationship around my money. And it is so important for people to interview the planner. Just like the planner is educating and empowering them, make sure that you're asking the right questions and keep asking. And if there's something that doesn't sit right with you about something that the person is saying, pay attention to that. If there's, one of the things that, and Mike and I have laughed about this before, I cannot stand for somebody to come at me like a used car salesman. It's like, don't do that to me, because I'm automatically not going to trust you, right? I'm just not. You have to be willing to trust your gut, to trust your internal alarm system. I have always said your gut does not lie. It doesn't. If this person is not sitting right with you, why would you give them their money? And I'm not victim blaming in the Madoff scam or any of those other scams that have hit. But when I read about it, because I actually taught probably about a month or so ago, Madoff came up in one of my lessons with my students. And I found myself saying, and why did y'all trust this dude? Like I understand that people are charismatic in the whole 9 yards, and they could sell, ice cubes to Eskimos in Alaska and can charm snakes and all that stuff. But I still believe that your internal alarm system is going to give something. People say, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. Something just is not sitting right. Why do you ignore that? Mm-hmm. Don't ignore that. It's the internal alarm system telling you, hey, don't give this guy my money. Don't do that. Ding, 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 ding. You can't go into this experience from a desperate place. You can't. You have to be open and receptive to learning. You have to be comfortable in, because what did I tell you? The very, very, very first time that Mike met, he asked me some personal questions. I said, Mike, I don't know. I told him straight up, total transparency. I said, Mike, I don't know. He was like, well, what? I said, Mike, I don't know. Didn't I tell you I don't know? I don't know. But what's so awesome about it is he respected that. He didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing what we were discussing, but he educates me about it. And I'm open and receptive, because you have to know what you don't know. Don't front and act like, because I've said to people, to your point, Ronnie, about folk that want to manage their own and do this, that, and the third, there's a level of expertise that comes with this. And it's one thing if you're that person like Mike did when he left in 2016 and said, you know what, he's going to become all things financial with his knowledge base. But you literally rolling the dice on that
Yes.
because you don't know if that's wise.
And to your point, and the reason I brought up the stock market, I feel like, you know, the stock market for my generation is y'all's generation lottery. You know, expect because I feel like apps like Robinhood and Webull and stuff like that, because it's so easy for, you know, anybody now to just, you can literally just download the app, put your bank information in there, and literally 2 business days later, you're allowed to start trading. And it's so easy. And, you know, like I said, you know, when you don't know, all you hear is, I can't tell you how many times I see so many people on social media do this. So many people all of a sudden are financial experts. So many people are financial advisors on social media with no type of credentials, no type of training. All they did was they got lucky a couple times in the stock market, and now they're out here writing ebooks on how to win in the stock market. And so many people, especially in my generation, they hear that. And I always tell people the stock market is a long-term game. That's very long term. I always use the example, and Mike, I'm pretty sure you even bring up the name like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett started investing at 11 years old in vending machines. And then he expanded that way. Like he's been doing this since 11. A lot of us just started last year when we ain't had nothing else to do. And the little bit of money we had, we put it in the stock market and just went like this. And for some people, they lucked up. I mean, for some people, they lucked up last year. Some people, they hit it big. They timed it perfectly. They did the right thing. They followed a formula and they did good. A lot of other people, like I said, you know, same thing with gambling, same thing with playing the lottery, playing in the stock market. If you have a lack of impulse and you can't stave off gratification, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose big. And just as many people won big last year, I've seen a lot of people delete them financial pages and go quiet because, you know, they got embarrassed, and it's a rough world out there. And I think for people in Mike's position, I think what has happened in recent years has made it very hard for people to, you know, just openly trust, you know, financial experts and things like that, because of, you hear so many of the scams and things like that. But I also think, you know, with anything else, not all of them are bad. And I think we both here can stand here today and sit there and say that, you know, in our interactions with Mike is somebody who definitely upholds the moral code and, you know, just the responsibility of taking care of people's finances and putting them in the right position to, you know, succeed themselves. So I think, you know, to your point, Dr. Pitts, people, you know, doing these things on their own and having a lack of impulse control has severely hurt a lot of people in their financial situations. And what do we know? When people suffer from financial situations, their mental health deteriorates. And as their mental health deteriorates, it's harder for them to, you know, rebound financially.
I want to add one more. It's sort of a question, I think. So Mike, so a lot of the posts that I put up this week, not only, you know, was it discussing generational wealth, but it was also talking about generational poverty and how poverty impacts families, and then tying it into the sports piece. One of the things that we looked at is, you know, the percentage of athletes that are living impoverished, and forgive me, I don't have the exact percentage in front of me from one of the articles that I posted, but it was a large percent. I think it was like 79%. I think it was like 79% of scholar athletes are living below the poverty level when they're in college. And then when you transition over into the NFL, there's a large percentage, you know, we know that athletes of color dominate the league, especially football anyway. A large percentage of them were born into poverty. And when I think about the connection between education and the role that poverty is playing, how, as you talked about financial planning, can you speak to how families that are in that socioeconomic status of impoverished, maybe a couple of baby steps that they can take that can be instrumental in shifting their financial situation?
Yeah, I think Dr. Pitts, it's starting small, right? It's
Mhm.
you don't have a whole lot, so you start with a small amount. And again, I always say habit, right? Forming
Mhm.
that habit of
Mhm.
incrementally putting a little bit away all the time so that it builds is the way to do it. I have young, clients in their early 20s, and I think I mentioned it during the last show that, it's like, hey, let's open up a brokerage account. So
Mhm.
what we're doing is we're investing in a brokerage account. It's a little different than Robinhood. I think that it's not individual stocks, but it's
Mhm.
mutual funds. And mutual
Mhm.
funds is like a variety of things. So you're
Mhm.
spreading your risk out, but it
Mhm.
costs $250 to open an account.
Mhm.
And then I get them to start putting in $50 a month to
Mhm.
start.
Mhm.
And I'll say, let's meet again in 6 months and see how it's going. So
Mhm.
in every case, they're like, oh, at first it was tough because it was they're not making a lot of money, but that $50 a month is quite a bit to them. But they
Mhm.
said after now I'm used to it. I just know that it's coming out, and now can I put in $100 now? It's like
Nice.
absolutely right. I said I just wanted to get you comfortable, and we could take your money out if you want because it's not locked up in a retirement account. It's in what's
Mhm.
called a brokerage account that's easily accessible. I said I'll
Mhm.
give you your money back, right?
Mhm.
And you say, hey, you tried it, didn't work out for you, that's fine. But in every case that I've done it, it has worked out, and they want to up their money, or they say, hey, when I start making more money, I want to put more in. And
Yeah.
that's great because now they're understanding, they're seeing that grow and starting out with relatively a small amount. And I think that's what you have to do, is just little bits at a time.
Thank you. And then the other part of my question, and you can wait until the very end to answer this, but I want to ask it now. um, the NFL draft is coming.
Mm.
These contracts are about to be obese.
Get bigger and bigger every year, right?
Yes, indeed. When and then seriously, I want to put it out there now so you can sort of think about it, and then that we can close out with your response to that. But I want to know what nuggets of wisdom you can share with these athletes that are getting ready to go from that 70 some percent of athletes that are living below the poverty level in college right now to woo.
Now you want you 1% of the population.
Right,
Like
right, right. So I'm
literally
gonna leave
one.
that. So I wanted to plant that seed, and if you could, right, Ronnie can circle back and have you speak
Sure.
to that. We're preparing to close out, but go ahead, Ronnie.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads me into one of the last couple of things I want to talk with you about, Mike, is taxes. And we finishing up tax season, the extended tax season to, I believe, May 17th. And I think just as important it is to know about financial literacy, I think taxes fall in that category too, because oftentimes, especially and if you want to touch briefly on this, because I try to explain this to people in the best way possible. But can you explain to people who might not be familiar with this, the tax change that happened in 2017 for people who filed W-2 taxes compared to 1099? Because I think that significant change of, people having to deduct certain things, and even though they increased the standard deduction, I still think that caught a lot of people off guard and they didn't necessarily know about that. So could you touch on that for a second and explain how that has kind of shifted the way we do taxes?
Yeah, and just for full transparency, Ronnie, I can't give tax advice or legal advice. So,
Got
uh,
you. Got
but
you.
so I don't want to dive too deep into that one. But I mean, pay your taxes, right? The uh, You've heard me say it before, right? I always want you to pay as much taxes to keep you out of prison, but that's it,
Mhm.
right? So. But the new tax law has changed, and it actually became much more beneficial to um, unwealthy people, let's say middle class, lower middle class, that sort of thing. It's actually worked out better in their favor.
Mhm.
So take that for what you will.
Got you. Um, and I think that's is especially important. Like I said, taxes are very important for people to know about, because a lot of people can definitely, especially with people doing Robinhood and things like that, getting capital gains.
You froze.
Yeah, so people that may be using Robinhood and not understand that any gains they're getting in that year will be taxable.
Mhm.
So it's important for them to understand that. And again, that's educating yourself, getting that knowledge, and really understanding what it is you're doing.
I apologize. My screen had froze up. I think my internet is messing up. I apologize. I didn't hear anything you said, but I'm assuming you answered the question. But Lord, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so I heard you mention that, when people come to you about a brokerage account, you normally typically have them start at $250 and then start with $50 a month. So what would, I guess, for somebody who wants to start getting invested in, mutual funds or having somebody help them with investing and things like that, how much money should you have before coming to a financial advisor? Like, is there like a certain amount that somebody should have saved up, or like, what is, their financial picture should look like before they come to see somebody like you?
Yeah, I'm going to use my favorite word again, depends, right? So it depends on the person's situation. Some advisors, it all depends on the playground they work in, right? The sandbox they work in. So, some people have a minimum asset level or net worth level.
Mm-hmm.
Some don't. Like I said, I'm helping a handful of my clients that are in their early 20s. They they've got $300 or whatever, like I said, to open up that brokerage account. That minimum amount is $250 to open it up. So
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy doing that because I'm helping them move forward. I'm helping educate them. I'm helping them form the good habits that will do them well for the rest of their lives. But I couldn't do that by myself full time and only work with those people. I just don't make any money off of that.
Got you.
So finding the right person that's willing to do that is what you need to do. So you don't need a lot of money. Find somebody like me that's willing to get you started. And again, you don't need a lot to do that. And also, I think, as you both know, when I'm meeting with somebody, I start educating and pointing out and asking the questions about all kinds of different areas of your
Mhm.
financial picture. So that, hey, if you haven't thought about it, now you've thought about it. It's like, oh, I didn't think of that. Now you know, hey, that's something I need to be thinking about when it comes to my overall financial picture. So again, it's that education, getting the knowledge, and starting small, and just moving up as you grow, as your income increases, and so on and so forth.
Got you. And one of my last questions is, when we talk about like net worth, and to my understanding, net worth is, the difference between your assets and liabilities, and whatever the difference is kind of like your net worth. Is net worth is something that, young people or people who are just getting started off and, investing, or, dealing with a financial investor, that's something that they should necessarily be concerned about? Because I think a lot of times people think, you have to be, a millionaire to live a comfortable life. And we know that's not necessarily true, but, you always hear people talk about your net worth, what's your net worth and things like that. Is the idea of net worth really that important for the everyday person who's just trying to live a comfortable life to you?
I don't think net worth, you said the word concern. I don't think it should be a concern. I think
Mm-hmm.
it should be a goal to grow over time. But it depends on your lifestyle. How do you want to live? If you want to constantly improve your lifestyle, well, that's going to take more assets, right? So you want to continue to grow that net worth over time. I tell my clients, hey, if I'm not helping you grow your net worth, fire me, because I'm not doing a very good job, right? The idea
Mm-hmm.
is to have your money grow for you while you're doing your day-to-day stuff, and you accumulate more, so that come retirement, most people want to have a comfortable lifestyle in retirement, right? But now
Absolutely.
you're not working anymore, so there's no paycheck per se coming in anymore. So you've got to live off of what you've accumulated up to that point. So again, I don't stress over net worth, but again, it should be a goal, and it should go up and not down.
Got you. Got you. And I think that's a great transition to, Dr. Pitts's final question. And, we can definitely, end off with this one, because I think this is definitely, really important for student athletes who are listening, because, you know, everybody thinks, well, when you make it to the NFL or NBA or MLB, they automatically think you're rich. They automatically think you've made it and stuff like that. And for those first 32 to 64 picks, absolutely, you know, especially the top 10. The top 10 are definitely the breadwinners. They're the ones who are raking in, you know, the 30, $25 million as rookies. However, all 256 draft picks are not going to be as blessed. And some of them won't see no type of millions of dollars for 4 or 5 years down the road if they're lucky. So what would be some advice to the rookie class that is getting ready to get drafted? I think next week actually, about how, you know, from the first round to the 7th round, how they should go about I got this money, I've gotten drafted, what should I do next?
Yeah, I can't imagine being in those positions, but you see it all the time. We hear about it all the time, and we've talked about it before. But I really think, you know, a money mindset or any kind of the way you are in this world is your mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which can often be passed, you know, from generation to generation. We talked about poverty. You know, we find that people in poverty tend to live that way, right? Generation after generation, and vice versa. Wealthy people, their kids grow up in a beautiful home and have the nicest things. And you know what? They end up getting a nice job or whatever, and they end up living the same way because that's their mind. They don't know any different. So that's kind of, they do the actions to get that. And it's just a mindset thing. So somebody coming in from an impoverished background into the NFL, for example, and end up with these fantastic contracts, I would strongly suggest they find a financial professional, someone they can trust to manage their money, because they don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, I've got tons of money, and you're going to blow it. You know, you're going to blow it. You're going to be on Cribs, or you're going to be on, you know, these TV shows and, you know, on social media, and because you just don't know what you don't know. So finding someone that can help, you know, manage your money, help it grow, help maybe keep it a little difficult to get at times, you know, so it's not just there when you snap your finger and, you know, do things like that. Because again, I mean, you get there and you it's got to be crazy, right? I can have anything I want at a moment's notice, and you start blowing it. So setting it up in the right way, getting educated, having a trusted person in your corner, so that they can help you and kind of say, whoa, you know, you brought up the Robin Hood and things like that before. We talked about the risk of it, but that it's a good thing because it's getting people investing that they otherwise might not have.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, one of the roles that I play with clients is I understand your emotion. I get to know my clients. I understand how they're going to act. I know what they're thinking. I can be the voice of reason sometimes when they're wanting to do something crazy. It's like, whoa, let's sit down. Let's talk about, you know, why we did this, why we put these things in place. Do you think going in this direction is really helping, you know, our original conversation and going to meet your goals, right? So it's kind of like, hey, let's take a breath here, stop, pause, and think about what we're doing, right? So I think that financial professional that knows how to manage the money, knows what to do with it, is key for these people, because they don't know. So you got to find somebody like that, I think. I hope that answers the question.
I see Dr. Pitts had, you want to add in Dr. Pitts?
I'm gonna piggyback off of what Mike said about the mindset. You know, I talk week in and week out about the power of our words and how important it is for people to just be cognizant of what they're saying, and what we feed grows. You know, I remember growing up, and I would get, even as a little kid, it would just irk me to the core of my soul when I would hear somebody in our family say that we were poor. And I just didn't receive that. And now, you know, that I've been grown for a minute, I look back in retrospect, and I have conversations with my parents, and I'm like, we were not poor. I can show y'all some poor people. I can show you some poor people.
Oh, yeah.
I've said to I'm like, Mom, you have a brand new car like every 3 years. You live in your own home. Oh, by the way, your house is paid for. You got equity coming out your ear sockets. My dad's house paid for. And I've said on previous shows, like, I am from a family of homeowners, and many of them at this stage, again, their homes are paid for. and they're sitting on, if y'all, I swear, if you open your mouth and say you poor one more time, I'll slap you in the face. Like, stop saying that. You are not poor. You might suck at managing your money, but you're not poor. And I think that it's so important for people to understand what I just said, as simple as it sounds, that what you feed grows. And if you keep this internal narrative going, it will keep, it perpetuates, I believe. It will continue to perpetuate generation after generation after generation. And these mindsets, like one of the things that you will not hear me say, I don't know that I've ever said it in my life, is that, oh, well, we can't do this because I can't afford it. I for years and years and years and years and years, and I can't even tell you when I started saying it, when I was going through some of the financial challenges that I went through as a single parent, I would say I'm having a temporary cash flow shortage. I wouldn't say I was broke. I would say I'm having a temporary cash flow shortage, right? I wouldn't tell Andre, oh, I can't afford that. And I would say, well, we can't get that right now, but I'll get it. You know what I mean? Like it's conditioning the mind. And oh, by the way, as my father tells Eric all the time, he was like, you know, she's a brat, right? I was like, I am not a brat. I'm not a brat. I just want what I want. But here's the thing. I'm willing to humble myself and follow instructions, because I'm gonna email Mike afterwards because we got some stuff we need to talk about. I need to get on your calendar. Let me go ahead and put that out there. I need to get on your calendar for next week. Got some stuff we need to discuss. But I believe in following instructions, right? And I know this man right here, Mike Profit, he has a clear picture of where I am and where I want to be. And I know and I trust that he can help me to get there. And I think that if people would just be willing to get out of their own way and recognize that part of their life's condition is because they're practicing the same behaviors that they've seen, you know, year after year after year after year in their family, and they're products of their environment. When are you going to be willing to do something different? When are you going to be willing to stop having those narratives about what you don't have, what you can't get, what you can't afford? I'm very, no surprise, public service announcement, I'm very stubborn. I'm very, very, very strong-willed. And I don't like being told what to do. And this is the context that I mean in it. I'm not okay with somebody telling me where I can live and what I can drive. I want what I want. You see what I'm saying? But if I don't understand how money works, if I don't understand what a FICO score is, if I don't understand the discipline that I have to incorporate in every aspect of my life so that I can live the life that I love living and live the quality of life, as Mike said in the very beginning of the show, so that I can live the quality of life that I want to live, then do I really want to live that life? If I'm not willing to do what's needed to be done to get there, then it's just lip service. And I think that people need to recognize that, and we got a couple minutes. You know, I grew up in a Christian home where people talk about, money is the root of all evil. Well, guess what? It's, first of all, that scripture says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And I actually love money. And I don't mean that in an inappropriate way or anything like that. When I say that I love money, I love the freedom that comes with money. I love the fact that, you know what, I'm getting married 1 month from today, and I can go on a honeymoon. I can, we're taking a beautiful honeymoon. We're going to have a beautiful celebration. We are living a beautiful quality of life that, as Mike said, that's being built upon that. And I'm not saying that to be grandiose or to brag. I'm saying that because we had a plan. And in that plan, it required financial discipline. And Eric and I were on the same page. And because we knew we wanted to get here, we took the necessary steps to get here. And now we're moving here and we're taking you see what I'm saying? And so oftentimes people make light of that. They talk about what they want. They talk about what they need. Oh, everybody want to play the Powerball and the whole 9 yards. For real. It's like, it's deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice as a people. I'm going to switch it to Black and brown for a moment. I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice when we're not willing to educate ourselves and to be disciplined. And how do we break the cycle of poverty? We have to educate. The kids have to be educated. You know, when I talked to Andre yesterday, he said, this, I'm gonna close out with this. He called me back when he got off work last night. He said, Mom, do you know why I was looking so intent when I was talking to you? I said, no, I didn't know if you were upset. He was like, no, Mom, I was making that money. And I laughed. I was like, boy, you crazy. He was like, no, Mom, for real, I'm serious. He's in sales, and he was, you know, he was closing a deal, and he was like, love you, talk to you later. Click. and he called me back because I was like, Dre, don't rush me off of it. Like, what's going on? But he was about his business, and he understands that there's discipline and those sorts of things. So I want to close out on that note that education, empowerment, liberation, discipline, we have the resources to break the back of poverty in our communities. And I believe that breaking the back of poverty and yanking it out at the root, I really do believe that it starts here. I believe that when folk can recondition their minds, they have the ability to recondition their wallets and their bank accounts and their investment portfolios. I believe that they have the ability to transition from poverty to a wealthy place and to learn how to sustain it. But they first have to recognize that they have to change the way they think about money, because I don't know anybody that's okay not being able to pay their bills. Folk talk about the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay, well, you know what? You go right ahead and be broke, and don't call me for my money, because the Bible says that. I mean, I'm keeping it real, and I'm not trying to be, you know, facetious or anything like that. It is what it is. All wealthy people are evil. The devil is a liar. So why folks sitting around waiting on these stimulus checks?
Talk about it. Talk about
Why
it.
folks sitting around waiting for a handout? You okay? You wealthy people are evil, but if somebody, she's clearing the house. Papa, here it is, check for $1 million. Oh, they're not evil no more, huh? Stop.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm done for real. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you both.
Thank
so
you again,
much.
Mike, for coming on, man. We really appreciated it.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And hopefully you'll come back again. We're not going to stop talking about money. We're not going to stop talking about wealth. And I'm serious. I'm going to call you because I need to get on your calendar. I got some stuff I need to talk about.
You got my number.
I do. And I'm putting your contact information in the window too. That chatter that you all heard when we were talking was because I was like, oh, I can't go on Facebook on my phone while we're on the show because the conversations overlap. So sorry. But look, folks, that's all we have for you today. We hope that you will tune in next week for HT Pregame. I'm your host, sports entertainment empowerment coach. What am I? Yeah, that's what I am. Don't say me no bye. Sports mental health empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Fitz, my amazing co-host, Ronnie Ransom. Thank you to our wonderful guest, Mike Prophet, today. Until next week, folks, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.